And UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is also addressing the issue of George Floyd. Let's just cut across.
And to save lives and to roll out a ventilator procurement, which the Labour-controlled Public Accounts Committee themselves said was a benchmark for procurement.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear what these texts show. The Prime Minister was lobbied by a wealthy businessman and a close friend for a change in the tax rules. Tax rules. The Prime Minister responded, "I'll fix it." Then, after a discussion with the Chancellor, who everybody seems to be lobbying these days, the Prime Minister texted his friend to say, "It's fixed." How many other people with the Prime Minister's personal number has he given preferential treatment to?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I recall the right honourable gentleman at the time saying that we should do everything that we could to get more ventilators, and indeed he congratulated the rollout of the ventilator. He said that well done to everybody involved for the ventilator challenge. And I just remind the House what we were facing in March last year, Mr. Speaker, which was that we had a new virus which was capable of killing people in ways that we didn't understand. The only way to help them in extremis was to intubate them and put them on ventilation. We had 9,000 ventilators in this country, Mr. Speaker. We secured 22,000 as a result of that ventilator challenge. I think it was entirely the right thing to do, to work with all potential makers of ventilators at that time, Mr. Speaker. And by the way, so does the former leader of the Labour Party, a man to whom I think he should listen, Tony Blair.
Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised the Prime Minister brings up former leaders, since it's his former leader, his friend, I think, Dave, who's at the heart of much of this. And I acknowledge thousands of businesses stepped up during the pandemic. That was a good thing, and we celebrate that. The difference is they didn't all have the chance to text the Prime Minister, ask him to fix the tax situation in exchange for doing that. That's the difference. At the heart of this scandal are people's jobs and wasted taxpayers' money. Take, for example, the thousands of jobs at Liberty Steel that are on the line, in Hartlepool, in Rotherham and elsewhere, following the collapse of Greensill Capital. The Prime Minister hasn't fixed that. In fact, he's done nothing to help steelworkers. Is it now, quite literally, one rule for those that got the Prime Minister's phone number, another for everybody else?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he calls it a scandal. He voted for the changes that we brought in. Our ventilator, he called our ventilator challenge an outstanding success, and I think he was completely right. This is a government that gets on and delivers for people in distress and delivers on the people's priorities. And yes, of course, I'm concerned for the families of steelworkers up and down the country. That's why the Business Secretary has been meeting with the unions and with the management of Liberty Steel repeatedly over the last few days. But we believe in British Steel, Mr. Speaker. It was under the last Labour government that jobs in steel fell by more than 50% and output fell by more than 50%. We've now got a 5 million tonne pipeline of British Steel with our massive infrastructure investments, and we intend to use our new freedoms under Brexit to make sure that procurement goes to British companies, Mr. Speaker.
Well, he says we believe in British Steel. Well, do something. I have to say to the Prime Minister, steel workers waking up this morning will find it deeply offensive to hear the Prime Minister boasting to his friends that he's the First Lord of the Treasury and we can give you the backing we need. He won't give the steelworkers the backing that they need. Mr. Speaker, this shows once again that favours, privileged access, tax breaks for mates, they're the main currency of this Conservative government. And if that's not the case, Prime Minister, can the Prime Minister tell me if one of the 3 million self-employed people who've been excluded from government support for over a year and now face bankruptcy, if they text the Prime Minister to ask for a tax break so they can survive, would he change the rules for them too?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've given, this government, I should say, has supported the self-employed with more than £14 billion throughout the pandemic, and that's as part of a vast package of support for jobs and livelihoods across the country. We continue to do everything it takes, and I think that he should take back what he said about the ventilator challenge. He attacks the ventilator challenge now. Our efforts to get more ventilators at a very, very difficult time for this country. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, by the way, in which he opportunistically attacked the vaccine task force at a critical moment, which he will recall. Mr. Speaker, we take the tough decisions that are necessary to protect the people of this country and get things done.
Mr. Speaker, if I had to correct the Prime Minister for everything he gets wrong, I'd be here all day. I take it that's a no as an answer to the question in relation to the 3 million. And there we have it. An open door, but for those with the Prime Minister's number, a closed door to the 3 million. What this shows once again is the extent of the sleaze and cronyism that's at the heart of his Conservative government. Let me try another way, Prime Minister. Let me try another way. If an NHS nurse, Prime Minister, who's been working on the front line during the pandemic, had the Prime Minister's phone number, would they get the pay rise they so obviously deserve?
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of what this government has done to support the NHS throughout the pandemic, with record investments and with another £92 billion that we put in to support the NHS throughout the pandemic. And what we're doing to help nurses, as he knows, is last year putting in the bursary of £5,000 plus the £3,000 on top to help them with training and the costs of childcare, a 12.8% increase on starting salary just in the last couple of years, Mr. Speaker. And above all, this is the government that is helping nurses and helping the profession by recruiting more than ever before. And there are already 50,000 more people in the NHS this year than there were last year, Mr. Speaker, and 10,600 more nurses. That's what I'd say to many of the nurses that I've talked to in the last few days and weeks, and we will continue to back them to the hilt.
Yes, Starmer.
If the Prime Minister had been talking to the NHS frontline, he'd know just how insulted they are by his pay cut after everything they've put in the last year. They didn't get a text from the Prime Minister. They got a kick in the teeth. Mr. Speaker, there's a pattern to this government. The Prime Minister is fixing tax breaks for his friends. The Chancellor is pushing the Treasury to help Lex Greensill. The Health Secretary is meeting Greensill for drinks. And David Cameron's texting anybody who'll reply. Every day there are new allegations about this Conservative government. Dodgy PPE deals, tax breaks for their mates. The Health Secretary owns shares in a company delivering NHS services. Sleaze, sleaze, sleaze. And it's all on his watch. With this scandal now firmly centred on him, how on earth does he expect people to believe that he is the person to clean this mess up?
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you why. Because I'll tell you why this government is doing the right thing at the right time. Because the difference between us and the Labour Party is I'm afraid, staringly obvious. And we get on with taking the tough decisions to protect the people of this country and to take our country forward, uniting and levelling up. We take the tough decisions to procure thousands, tens of thousands of ventilators in record time, which apparently he now opposes. We put forward tougher sentences for rapists and violent criminals, Mr. Speaker, which he then opposes on a 3-line whip, Mr. Speaker. And we take tough decisions to stick up for the fans, of our national game. Captain Hindsight snipes continually from the sidelines. This government gets on with delivering on the people's priorities, Mr. Speaker.
Philip Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Back in 2019, the government gave the Labour Council in Bradford hundreds of thousands of pounds to carry out a feasibility study for Shipley Eastern Bypass. It was due to report in the autumn of 2019. They put it back to April 2020, and yet a year on from that, there is still no sign of it. Please will the Prime Minister intervene to ensure this vital infrastructure project is delivered, and will he meet with me and our honourable friend, the member for Keighley, to see how we can progress our campaign to break away our constituencies from Bradford Council to set up a truly local unitary authority to deliver for our constituents?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on the second point, I'm sure the relevant minister will be happy to meet and to consult him. But on his point about the Shipley bypass, the matter is currently with Bradford Council, and I suggest that Labour-controlled council follow the example of many Conservative-controlled councils and deliver that essential infrastructure project on time, creating jobs and opportunities for his constituents.
Let's go to the Leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford. Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate myself with the remarks of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition on both the Queen's 95th birthday and the justice that we've now seen in the George Floyd case. Mr. Speaker, this morning's revelations surrounding the Prime Minister's interference in COVID contracts are incredibly serious. Whether it's cash for questions in the 90s or text for contracts during this pandemic, people know this is the same old story. This is how the Tories do government. The Prime Minister is at the very heart of this scandal. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister reveal today how many more COVID contracts he personally fixed? And if he has nothing to hide, will he publish all personal exchanges on these contracts before the end of the day?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course, there's absolutely nothing that to conceal about this, and I'm happy to share all the details with the House, as indeed I've shared them with my officials immediately. Mr. Speaker, and it's thanks to that immediate action that we've been able to roll out, and not just to deal with the ventilator challenge, but also to help the people of the whole United Kingdom to get access in record times to the vaccines on which we all depend. And I think what the people of this country, and the same goes for rolling out PPE, Mr. Speaker. We've had to work at incredible speed, and I think the people of this country understand that it is sometimes necessary to act decisively to get things done.
Let's go back to Ian Blackford. Ian.
If the Prime Minister says there's nothing to see here, publish them. Let us all see them. Let's have that transparency, because frankly, his excuses just don't stack up. Last March, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor had all the time in the world to fix contracts for a cosy club of friends and Tory donors, but didn't have any time to support the millions of self-employed. Those 3 million people didn't have a David Cameron or a James Dyson to text the Prime Minister for them. They were on their own, and they were left behind by this Prime Minister. This Tory text for contract scandal is growing more and more serious with every revelation. The Prime Minister was eager to initiate an inquiry into his predecessor, David Cameron. Will be as quick to commit to a public and comprehensive inquiry into himself and his own government.
Politics, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he says we had all the time in the world. In fact, as the House will recall, at the end of March last year, the pandemic was taking off very fast, and we had to act very fast, as I think people up and down this country understand. And I thought that his dog just made a more sensible contribution just now than he did.
Faye Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Farmers in Brecon and Radnorshire have worked tirelessly to give us world-class British food throughout the pandemic. In return, the Welsh Labour and Liberal Democrat government have given them a slap in the face with their nitrate vulnerable zone policy, which will do nothing for water quality and ignores the water companies dumping thousands of tonnes of sewage into our rivers. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister agree with me that this demonstrates Welsh Labour's absolute contempt for rural areas like mine?
Yes, she is entirely right, Mr. Speaker, because agriculture is, of course, devolved in Wales, and if people want to send a clear signal and they want change in the way farmers are treated in Wales, and I hope they will vote Conservative in the Welsh Assembly elections in just 2 weeks' time and vote for a party that actually champions agriculture and believes in it.
Let's go to Sir Geoffrey Donaldson. Sir Geoffrey.